What's up, everybody? Welcome to Ripstop on the Record, episode 48. I'm Jameson.
I'm Isaac.
Today we are re-releasing episode 24, which is titled something... We talk with Butch Whiting, the CEO and co-founder of Kryptek. This is why we outline podcasts and the intros, which we didn't do. But yeah, so if you want to learn more about Kryptek and Camo sciences, then this is an awesome episode. And even if you don't want to learn more about those, you're probably wrong, and you should listen to this. Not that you're wrong about everything, but you actually want to learn more. Because I am not the world's biggest Camo fan, but this episode was truly fascinating.
A lot of good stories.
Butch has got a lot of stories. So does, Kryptek is kind of founded on a whole slew of stories, if you think about it, based on their experiences fighting for American Armed Forces overseas. So super fascinating episode, and we highly recommend you listen to it. A few announcements first. First of which is we just released a new color of 210D HDPE Ripstop.
Moss green.
Moss green. That's right. Or as Tim wanted to call it, slime green.
Yeah. Slime. What up, slime?
Yeah. It's not slime green, though. But it was worth the effort. If you like this color, please check it out. It's probably most notable for being on the Z-Packs. I forgot the pack name. Z-Packs made a pack out of the moss green for a long time. So if you've seen some of their Ripstop packs, then check that out. But it's a great color. If you're really interested, go check it out. We're not sure if we're going to carry it long term, but we have some now if you're interested. Next up, we also have the Community Maker Challenge coming up here in just a few weeks. You need to get your submissions in by August 7th. So for anyone that doesn't know, this is an open sewing competition, basically, for anybody. You don't have to be good at sewing to enter. You just need to create a project that solves a problem. So whether that's carrying your burrito around or making a belt that you can attach your dog to for running through the woods, or that's creating a partner bidet. Just saying.
I think I need a pouch that holds a box of Cheez-Its that gets suspended between the two front seats in my truck. Because my wife and I kill some Cheez-Its while we're driving.
You should eat them. You probably shouldn't kill them. Just put them in your mouth.
I'm still killing them.
It's really violent, Isaac. Should work on that. Finally, if you like this podcast, please rate, subscribe, comment, review, whatever other adjectives I could say that you could help support the podcast or demonstrate what it is you like about the podcast. That would be huge. So we can go to Kyle and Jason and remind them why this is important.
Did you say review?
I don't remember. It was just kind of a
review.
Stream of consciousness.
5 stars, baby.
4 is good too, but no less.
Yeah.
No more.
Preferably 4.5.
Do that. Super simple. Go on whatever app you listen to podcasts, Google, iTunes, Spotify. I guess you know because you're listening to this. But if you know other people that listen to MYOG, send them our way. So we're dialing back 24 exact episodes, but first we have a little game to play between Isaac and I. So if you've seen Kryptek patterns, they have some super tactical centered ones, hunting, tactical type environments, but they also have some high fashion and streetwear applications, I think you'd call them, that are fascinating. So for the ones that are not based on actual biological environments, Isaac and I are going to present a pattern to one another and guess what the best environmental application would be if these were to have a particular place to go. So you need to see what Kryptek looks like. Just Google it and you'll see them come up. There's a lot of crazy ones. But Isaac, I'm going to assign you a pattern here.
All right, let's do it.
I need you to tell me where this one belongs. All right. The pattern I'm choosing is Diablo.
No! I was going to do that one. Dang it.
For anyone that doesn't know, this is Diablo. Pull it up here on the YouTube video. But basically, it's a straight red. It's a red camouflage.
Okay, so...
Where's this environment, Isaac?
Diablo would be used if you were going on a covert mission to hell. Because you would fit in with all of the red lava and noxious fumes.
So it seems like it could also be a covert mission for the inside of Volcano.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, Volcano. If an evil genius set up his lair in
Spy
Volcano.
Kids. That happened in Spy Kids, I think.
Yeah, they actually might have used
They probably used Diablo.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah, Diablo is literally like 17 shades of red. It's just big red blob. I mean, it's really nice, and it's, as you'll find on the episode, incredibly technologically advanced camo. All right, Isaac, what camo pattern do I have to decipher?
All right, you're not going to see this one coming.
All right,
because it's camo. All right. This one is Grom. Grom looks like this.
All right. So for those listening and watching, you can see it now. Grom has shades of green, brown, with a white base and gray accents. Okay, Grom, I've got it actually. Grom is what happens when, at an ice cream parlor, when the pistachio gets mixed, or like the mint chocolate chip gets mixed with like the caramel fudge swirl ice cream, because like the white is like the vanilla base, and that's what happens like in between. You know, when they take the containers out and like you keep dipping the spoon, it rests there on the countertop. That's what happens. Like the brown, like the waffle cone, and then there's like the pistachio and the green, and the vanilla and the waffle cone, like the brown, all that.
Yeah.
That's what that is. That is an ice cream parlor. So when you need to, you get shrunk down to about 3 inches of size, and then you have to do a covert mission into an ice cream parlor, that is your one.
That's it.
That's it. Grom. And that is not why Kryptek is popular, but it's why they can be, because you can have covert missions for everything.
Volcanoes, hell, ice cream shops.
Same thing. I love ice cream.
Me too.
All right. We won't keep you any longer. On to the episode. Thanks again to Butch Whiting and the Kryptek crew for sitting down with us. We will talk to you in 2 weeks. Hey, Butch. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So tell us who Butch Whiting is. Where are you? Where is Kryptek located? And who are you outside of Kryptek?
Well, Butch Whiting, CEO, co-founder of Kryptek Outdoor Group, located in Eagle, Idaho, which is a suburb of Boise, Idaho. Outside of Kryptek, I'm still Kryptek. For the most part, I spend the majority of my time as much as I can in the backcountry. I love to hunt in super austere environments all over the world. I'm a hyper focused father at the same time. Right now, I've been spending a lot of time at rodeos. My youngest daughter is heavy into rodeoing. She just won the National High School Rodeo Queen title. And so I find myself pulling a horse trailer often right now. I'm kind of taking a tactical pause, and I've missed out on a few corporate long range shooting courses this summer in light of going to support my daughter in high school rodeo. But I'm the same guy in Kryptek as I am outside of Kryptek. We're a super authentic brand. Our brand slogan, Battlefield to Backcountry, it's really who we are. Bunch of former soldiers that absolutely love to hunt, that are passionate about the backcountry. And that's it in a nutshell.
Fascinating. I noticed in your About Us how you mentioned specifically, I think verbatim, austere environments in the backcountry. That's a fascinating word. It's not one that you see a whole lot. Explain that a little bit more. Just touch on more what you mean by that and what that means to Kryptek.
Well, everything from third world shitholes that, I spent the majority of my adult lifehood in, fighting our nation's battles, where, just everyday commodities are not a luxury, all the way back into, just getting into areas that have never had, a foot planted on terra firma. For the most part, if they have, it's been very rare. Just basically putting ourselves into environments that are extremely difficult to operate in, and most people don't access, or they don't go in and try to get into. And that remoteness also, in most cases, relieves the hunting pressure. And it's also a part of the experience. When you go in and you do a 14-day or 21-day float hunt in Alaska, and you pack everything in that you need to survive on for in your backpack, or a few extra ditty bags if you're floating. It's just a part of, I guess, what I really enjoy as far as how to hunt and how to spend time in the backcountry. Austere environments, though, to answer your question, I've spent a lot of years in Afghanistan and Iraq and Africa and various other places, but really I'm thinking more about areas on the hunting side where, the climate changes quickly, the environment changes quickly, and your success or failure is really going to depend on your gear. So those types of places where you're not able to go back to the truck and warm up, or go back to the lodge and warm up, it's really dependent on your bushcraft and your skill sets, and basically just being self-reliant.
So you mentioned a few different places that you like to hunt and that you've spent time as a soldier. Out of those places, what are some of your favorite? And favorite is kind of a general term, because I've been in some places that I wouldn't call my favorite, but are definitely interesting, whether it's the landscape or the animals that you find there. What would you say is your, like, the most interesting place, or a place that you'd go back to?
Well, I don't know if I'd go back at this point, but probably one of the most unique places that I've been able to go to is into Tora Bora in Afghanistan. And I flew Apache attack helicopters in the U.S. military, but I was actually selected to go in on the ground with the 3PP CLI, which is the 3rd Princess Patricia's Light Infantry out of Canada, out of Edmonton, Canada. And we air assaulted in the Tora Bora and basically blew the cave entrances back open that had been J-dammed to exploit the caves and look for remnants and DNA. And so that was a super unique opportunity, especially as an H-64 Apache attack helicopter guy, to be on the ground and be in Tora Bora. I can tell you that my loadout was a disaster. I doubled up all my ammo magazines. I had batteries for days. I had my radio. I was so heavy. I don't know what it weighed, but it was a lot. And after 2 weeks in Tora Bora, I was ready to jettison some of that load along with my plate carriers and so on. But that was a super, super unique experience. And I can remember the Northern Alliance guys came in and put on a barbecue, for a lack of better terms. They pushed some goats up into to where we were operating out of, and that became our barbecue and our meal. And that was like still super vivid in my mind. And I actually have a picture on my desk of me and Tora Bora riding a Northern Alliance donkey. And so that's probably one of the most memorable places that I've been in terms of mountains. And, New Zealand is iconic. It's super crazy getting into some of those areas. You almost have to have in many cases, a helicopter to get into. We took helicopters in the Tora Bora, but obviously Alaska, the Brooks Range, there's all kinds of cool mountain ranges and stuff that I've hunted in. But by far, Tora Bora was by far the coolest. And we actually rolled a lot of that mountain battles and experience into one of our collections, our altitude collection. If you look at the naming on that, we have the Tora pant and the Bora jacket. We have the Takur Gar, which is an Operation Anaconda. That was Roberts Ridge. All the names on all those pieces all have meaning. And it really kind of started out of that experience in Tora Bora. So long answer, but that's the answer.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
That's a phenomenal story. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So that ties in perfectly. Included in your About Us and About Kryptek, you mentioned how you and Josh Claiborne were in Afghanistan when you kind of discovered there could be more to camo. Tying the loose ends for us. I know the story, or that is a little bit of the Cliff Notes version of that.
Yeah,
but
Cliff Notes.
How did Kryptek come out of that experience?
Well, it was actually out of Iraq, and what we saw was we got to see all the coalition troops, and we were looking at it from a bird's eye view from aerial platforms and what worked really well and what didn't work. The one thing that was super consistent was that all the coalition operations or units, and including the US, use camouflage netting. And by far, no matter what, even though you might be off some different shades in the webbing that's woven into the netting, camouflage netting was the most effective passive concealment measure that we saw on the battlefield. And, you know, like that video you're referencing talks to, that goes back to World War II. That was our idea and inspiration after we got to see what worked, what didn't work. You know, what could we bring to the market that would replicate that without having the difficulty of a ghillie suit and all the junk hanging off your shoulders and super cumbersome, super wet, or when it gets wet, super cumbersome, super heavy. So that was the inspiration for the original Kryptek family of camouflage, was to take that three-dimensional aspect and figure out how to put it onto a two-dimensional surface with the constraints of military grade wet printing. And that's where you start to really come into some challenges. So you guys digitally print at Ripstop by the roll. You can print anything you want. And digital printing, heat transfer printing has the limitations, and where the delineation is and the limitation is when you start to look at that camouflage in the infrared and the shortwave infrared spectrum. So if you're looking at it through a set of night vision goggles, if you take these camos that are digitally printed or heat transfer printed, they will glow under a set of NVGs. So if you have an IR light on a handheld camera and you film it and you look at it, it's going to look like your Gumby the glow stick. It's going to look like white snow camo. But if you do that same thing with military grade fabrics that have been printed properly, then it's still going to be grayscale camouflage. And that's where the delineation is between what you can do on military grade printing versus digital and heat transfer. And that's where the challenge is. And that's always going to be the constraint until a technology comes along to where you're able to do whatever, however you want, and still have those properties that are built into the fabrics that provide concealment when you're going against a near peer competitor.
I gotta say, I have never thought about the infrared effects on digital printing fabric before. So thanks for introducing me to that one.
We know all about it. It was all about it. That was a major consideration when we took that idea that we had and we wanted to build a super functional camouflage for the US military. But it was also being tested in those spectrums. You know, the DoD spent probably the better part of, you know, a year testing at high illum, where, you know, you're going to stand out under, you know, 90% illum under night vision, enhanced visual acquisition devices. So most of the time, civilian market, hunting market, no concerns about that. You know, there's a lot of speculation about how undulancy and, you know, various detergents and brighteners and so on. And so that's about as far as you're going to get. Law enforcement, same thing. No one in LE, tier 1 LE, like a CERT team or a SWAT team, they're not concerned about infrared, shortwave infrared. It's when you get into military application and you're going against a near peer competitor. It used to be having access to those visually enhanced devices was pretty limited, right? You had to be sophisticated. Well, now you can go online and buy stuff that's relatively inexpensive, super cheap, but almost just effective, or if not as effective as when I was active duty, and it can show up at your doorstep on Amazon, right? So everybody's starting to have it.
So would you say that is one thing, there can be many, that makes Kryptek stand out?
to a layman like myself, I'm not super familiar with camouflages. I don't know the ins and outs that well. So they end up kind of appearing to be, well, they're all supposed to make you look invisible, more or less. Is that something, that essence of kind of the 3D imagery printed onto a 2D, that makes Kryptek stand out a little bit more from other camouflages?
Well, what really makes it stand out is probably not necessarily like infrared, shortwave infrared, military application. Is the true challenge is the hunting camouflage. The majority of them will start to blob out once you get past 100 meters, if not closer, 30 meters. So now you've just got a solid blob and you just look like you're one color out there. And Kryptek actually developed our camouflage starting at 300 meters, which is the max effective range of a 5.56 round. And we started to pull it back in and stopped at 10 meters. We stopped at 10 meters because that's what the government said, that's all the closer we're going to test. Whereas conventional hunting camouflages, they will start at what I call 48 inches or shelf appeal. What looks good on the screen? What looks good up close? And then as you back out, at some point, it's no longer functional, right? It doesn't conceal you any longer. That was the whole purpose behind our camouflage development. What we got really lucky with, for a lack of better terms, was landing on that shelf appeal. We landed on shelf appeal by accident. It wasn't our primary intent. Functionality was our primary intent. But what we found was, it started to we had interest in areas that we never imagined. The groundswell that I talk about in that Who We Are video, in lifestyle. And, I think probably the best analogy of that lifestyle aspect, it's so far from functionality, it's not even funny, is when you have people on their own accord that are wrapping Ferraris and Lamborghinis and Audis and $250,000 cars. If you take any of those other hunting camos that somebody might be familiar with, I would challenge you to go find somebody on their own accord that paid their own money to wrap their $250,000 Ferrari in that. I can show you, you can find it on the internet where they've done that in Kryptek, So we hit that lifestyle aspect. Kryptek has got this, kind of, it's a lifestyle deal. And I never thought in 1,000 years, when we're developing camouflage for the U.S. military and U.S. Spec Ops and Coalition Spec Ops, that we'd also, be on everything from cowboy boots to surfboards. I mean, it's just happened.
Super interesting. So I wanted to go back to when you were talking about the effective ranges and when you were developing these patterns. In that original design process, what did that look like? Did you start with different colors of netting and then print that onto what the fabric you're using, or just tell me a little bit about that original design process. The original problem set for the U.S. Army Camo Improvement effort was to have 3 patterns that basically went together. So the 3 areas, was in woodland. And so you had this form out there basically that was, non-functional, didn't go together. And the idea would be that you could take that transitional camouflage in a plate carrier, a pack system, a helmet cover, and it would go and work with your desert variant, and it would also work with your jungle variant. It would still be functional with flow and those type of deals. So then the color selections came about, right? And to answer your question, Isaac, what we did was we used the same process that the DoD used to analyze our coloration and palettes, which was called a PIP, which is a picture inside of a picture. Okay. And so we would take, we used basically chiclets, just a swatch chiclet. Yeah. And we would take pictures, transitional library pictures, and we would adjust and play with the macro micro pattern, and we'd work it out from 300 meters back in a 20-meter increments to 10. Okay. When the DoD tested it, phase 1 testing, they actually put it on a silhouette of a man. They did the same thing. They put all these different terrain shots up, and they took 900 soldiers over the period of 1 year. They put them in a room, and they'd flash up this terrain shot,
and the soldiers had a halo device that dropped down and tracked their retinas, and they'd start looking around. And once they acquired the target and the algorithms matched the geometry, the timing would stop, and they measured that in microseconds. And so the longer it took, the better the camouflage worked. And that's how they down selected from the 60 some odd companies that started with this down to the final 4. So that's the end state, is that we utilize a process called picture in picture.
That's pretty interesting to me. That just that whole process of, you know, analyzing the direction of people's pupils and things like that. That just seems like a very.
It was expensive. They spent north of $10 million on that phase 1 testing, and then also the phase 2 testing was all force on force naked eye acquisition, and then visually enhanced acquisition back into infrared and shortwave infrared. So on the phase 2, we were monetized. We set up printing domestic U.S. Military grade fabrics. All the findings, all the finishings, all that was sent off to third-party cut and sew. That third-party cut and sew contractor made uniforms in every camo pattern. So there was 12 all total in from the final 4, and then those were issued and basically tested throughout really the globe. All our FOBs downrange and here domestically in the U.S. at the bases and so on. So
really cool.
The claim to fame for Kryptek really is that we are the only camouflage that's in the civilian hunting / lifestyle market that's been extensively tested by the hey, we want this variant of Kryptek, and they sent us a picture and we started to look at it, and it was soldiers that were in a mortar pit launching mortars, and they had camo netting over the top of them, and the sun was casting a shadow in onto those soldiers, and it was actually shadows on top of the Kryptek camo, and we were like, wow, you know, that's actually Kryptek. They don't even know that that's a shadow being cast upon it. And so Obscura was developed utilizing basically an idea inspiration that was sent to us by accident, and then drawing upon Tiger Stripe, which is probably the most infamous and one of the most effective camo patterns that's ever been in existence. And so we looked back at a lot of information and examples of the Tiger Stripe camo, in addition to what was being provided to us by this coalition military unit, and basically formed Obscura. The thing that you get in is the variants, you know. So the 3 original Kryptek camo patterns were Highlander, Mandrake, and Nomad. But then there's a whole another family. There's Typhon, there's Raid, there's Wraith, was Yeti until Yeti sued us. The snow camo, we had to change it. It goes on. Obscura is the same way. So we developed a camo pattern called Transitional. That's extremely functional. Grom is the snow variant, super badass, really super badass. And then Nox is the black variant. So those are the 3 commercialized variants that we jumped on right away. But then you get into all these other patterns, and all they are is plugging in different colors. The macro pattern and the micro pattern remain exactly the same. You just start sticking in different colors. And in some cases, the customer has a say, and they want really crazy, bizarre shit. Like if you were to look up Obscura Loki, which is this tie-dye variant, it looks like when all the hippies get in the park here in Boise, it looks like a Loki fest. I mean, there's the bright reds, the bright yellows, extremely European, right? And I never thought in a million years Kryptek would be doing a tie-dye variant, but the customer requested that. So we're like, okay, well, what Pantones do you want? They give us the Pantones, we plug in, give them 5 variants back, and they're like, oh, we like 2 and 3. Can you print those out and send them to us? All right, we sent it to them. We're like, all right, we love 2. Well, there you go. We got Loki. first hippie camo that was officially made for a military application. And Europe loves it. Probably some of your guys will love it too, because it looks, I mean, if you're into tie-dye, Loki's your camo, man.
Been doing the product images for all the Kryptek patterns. So earlier this morning, I was getting swatch photos and repeated images and things like that. And I came across all 18 of the patterns that we have from you all, and Loki was one of them. I was looking around, I'm like, guys, what sort of, like, what is hiding here? And Carter's like, dude, that's a lifestyle camo. I'm like, oh,
That's just
I noticed that specifically. I'm like, this is wild. Some of these are very believable. Like you said, Altitude, Highlander, Knox, maybe. Some of them are like, I could see this in an environment. This one has very few environments, or so I thought.
it's a really interesting discussion point. I've had groups reach out to me to talk about the psychology of camouflage, that, you know, they have no interest in camouflage. They're interested in the fashion aspect of it. There is a psychology, a functional psychology of camouflage. The first and foremost, it's the most important, is called IFF, identify friend or foe. That was the original intent, that why people wore different uniforms before, you know, we started to slap camo on, so that we knew who was who and what was what. And we knew we were shooting the right guys, and we weren't shooting our own guys. It's still a true aspect of combat today. IFF. Then you get into concealment, you get into functionality, you get into all these things, but still there's a subset to military camouflage, and that is esprit de corps, morale, recruitment, retention. You know, when we had to wear a camo pattern that looked like it was only good in a gravel parking lot, it just looked shitty, but it worked great at night under NVGs, and the selection process was such that it got put into main play. But all those aspects play into it. And it's really fascinating when you start to look at how camouflage then translates into just fashion runways in France. You know, supermodels wearing dresses that are in a camo pattern that was intended for, you know, combat or a variant thereof. So there is a psychological aspect. Some of it's truthful and meaningful. The other of it is just a complete fashion component, for sure.
Do you have a pattern that you are particularly tied to? I'm sure it's like choosing a favorite child, but I'm sure there's one that sticks out, whether it's for a reason, like you said, like Loki, where you just had no idea it was coming, or something that you spent a lot of time hunting in that has a special connection. Is there a pattern that you like more, or a little bit more fond of?
In terms of pattern, Highlander is by far my favorite. It's so diverse and can be used in so many different environments. And, you know, there's been so much positive feedback from both the hunting market and the military market on how effective it is. When that was first being tested by some of the tier 1 special operations members in the US, they were calling it Mike Foxtrot for mindfuck. And these were guys that were trained observers that were being, you know, we had with us friends of ours or pro staff or whatever. It's just extremely functional, super functional. In terms of collections, I'm probably more keen on the Altitude collection as a whole, just because we're tied back into Scholler fabrics, and the technologies that Scholler has are super badass. The performance of the fabrics are off the charts. But in terms of camo patterns themselves, if I had to bleed a pattern and I only got to choose one, it'd probably be Highlander.
The story of Kryptek is, I'm sure, close to home for a lot of DIYers and MYOGers, people that often see something and then believe they could probably make that version better than what is currently offered. That seems close to your story, as you and Josh kind of thought camo could maybe be done better. What is it about you and Josh that thought you could go off and make camo? Obviously, you had a lot of experience wearing it, but it's a highly technical environment. What sort of mental aspect or personality traits do you think are required to step out and do something like that?
Well, what we first saw before we got into the camo aspect was that there was a lot of enhancements in apparel that had been driven forward by the war on terror and crossed all weapon systems and radio systems and communications and everything. But there was an enormous amount of enhancements that were happening in apparel, and especially in special operations. And so our idea was to take some of those features and functions and spiral them into the civilian hunting market. And that's really what started when Kryptek first launched. It was with Cabela's, and the only place you could buy Kryptek was at Cabela's for 3.5 years. And the camo pattern that Kryptek, original Kryptek, was in was actually Mothwing Mountain Mimicry. It wasn't Kryptek camo. We had this aspiration and these ideas like, we're going to make our own camo at some point. And really the catalyst that brought that to the forefront was when the U.S. Army Camo Improvement Effort came out, and we're like, well, now's the time to take these ideas that we have and bring them forward. We were never sitting back going, hey, wouldn't it be cool to be a camo company? We were sitting back going, hey, wouldn't it be cool to be in the outdoor industry? Wouldn't it be so cool if we were in the outdoor industry and we could go do what we love? We could go hunting, fishing, hiking, backpacking, rafting, all those things, and actually sustain a lifestyle for our family. That was the intent. And truth be told, we just kind of followed the opportunities and jumped on the opportunities and aggressively pursued ideas and concepts. And I can tell you, it wasn't easy. I can remember writing personal checks out of my bank account and my wife looking at me going, you are batshit crazy, right? What are you doing? But, risk much to gain much. And that's how it went.
Yeah, that's that sounds very familiar to a lot of us here at Ripstop and a lot of our customers, honestly. I mean, me personally, I love the outdoor industry. I love hunting. I love fishing, much like what you were just talking about. And my whole, motivation for going into the textile industry was so that I could, somehow eventually make my gear that I didn't want to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on, because it had that aspect of me making it myself. Excuse me. So that's really, really cool that you say that, because I think a lot of people that love the outdoor industry feel the same way. How can I do something that I love and sustain myself and my family while doing it? So let's see here. I have one more question for you. Let's see. Okay, so the similarities you see between hunting and your patterns, like I was just saying, I love making gear. Part of that is making my own gear to hunt with. Is that something that you see a lot of with your customers? A motivator for using Kryptek versus something else, is that they can take that and then it takes them further into the outdoors or further into the field, whatever it is.
Well, guys today want to, in many cases, have their pack match their rifle, match their gear that they're wearing, so they're all dress right dress. And when it comes to Kryptek, we have, compared to our primary competitors, there's a lot of options to decorate, whatever it is, your weapon, your bow, arrows, so on and so forth. So I do think that when you have an entire ensemble, people will go out of their way to do the other pieces. There's a lot of DIYers that are doing their own holsters. They're doing, they're buying the Kydex and then they're forming their own products. They're buying raw fabrics. In this case, I'm sure many of them will be buying fabrics from you guys, and who knows what they're coming up with. They're making to add, I guess, to their ensemble or their collection. I'm super fascinated with the guys that are super hardcore bushcraft DIY everything. I mean, from shooting the deer to processing the leather to making their own buckskin clothes and stuff. But realistically, majority of folks are not to that level. If you can buy some fabric off the shelf and have some sewing experience, who knows what'll be coming out of it. And with your fabric selections, specifically that Dyneema, which is like uber awesome, I'm excited to see what people come up with. And I'm hopeful they'll share it and, tag it on Instagram so we can share it as well, and cross promote those guys that are free spirited, DIY, self-sustaining individuals, have a pioneer spirit. And Kryptek can be a part of that adventure for them.
Yeah, I'm super excited to see what some of our customers come up with, and I mean, I'm personally am excited for this because I'm planning on going on a caribou hunt next year in Alaska, and I'm like just geeking out about all the stuff that I could do now that we carry some of your patterns, and so yeah, personally I'm excited about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Kryptek was born in Alaska. When I got in the military, that's where it was actually formed, and I was living 20 miles north of Fairbanks, and super austere environment. If your shit works there.
Was it North Pole by any chance?
North and North Pole. I was up Chena Hot Springs Road about 20 miles. But actually I have caribou pictures on the wall from my youngest daughter when she was 10 that she shot up there. I killed a bunch of caribou and moose and doll sheep and everything else. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, I'll tell you, one of the best guys that's not in the main light from Alaska, that it's a complete DIYer, is Larry Bartlett from Pristine Ventures. And, he broke the mold on synthetic game bags called tag bags. There's a bunch of options now, but he saw a need for a super lightweight synthetic bag. He went out and basically got that developed and commercialized. He's probably the most famous for making pack rafts in Alaska to float those rivers. And you might be doing a float hunt up there when you go with one of his pieces. But true pioneer spirit, saw a need in the market, went after it. At the end of the day, Alaska is the proving grounds for Kryptek, so it's near and dear to my heart.
We've talked about a lot of different applications of Kryptek, from maybe the expected of military and hunting to the unexpected, like cars and runways even. What is an application of Kryptek that has surprised you more than anything else? We see it all the time. We've seen people make blow-ups, like blow-up inflatable devices out of our...
Yeah.
What have you seen?
Dude, tattoos. It's the most crazy shit ever. Tattoos, people getting full sleeve Kryptek tats, whether it's the logo included, the name, the camo, and there's a plethora of them. It's not like just one, crazy son of a bitch. I mean, there's a ton of them. It's the craziest shit I've ever seen in my life. And if you would ask me that.
Did you ever think that something that you came up with would eventually find itself permanently on someone's skin?
No. I could see like Claycorn. Claycorn's a tat guy. I mean, he's a walking billboard. He's a audacious, in your face type of guy too. But when it's like everybody else and dudes that you've never even met, it's just fucking weird. I'll tell you the other craziest thing. It's not a camo, but it's a logo, Kryptek logo, right? And we see this shit pop up all the time. But a couple years ago, my dad drew this premium elk tag in Idaho. And I took him up and killed him a really nice bull. And anyway, he had to get some dental work, and he was getting some dentures. He's pushing 70s. And my daughter calls me up or texts me. She just said, "Dad, did you see Papa's tooth?" And I'm like, "What?" So he took one of the elk ivories out of this bull that we killed 2 years ago, and he freaking had it put into his dentures with the Kryptek logo on it. So besides the tattoos, that's also like one of my craziest shits I've ever seen. I get it. He's my dad.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah. So anyway.
That is phenomenal. Oh man, that's the craziest application of anything I have seen. We've seen some really wild stuff, but that is.
I said, how did you get the dentist to agree to that? I mean, who does that? Here, you drop off the elk ivory tooth, and he's like, "Hey, give me a couple days. I got to whittle on it."
Was he also a taxidermist by any chance?
He probably was. My dad, knowing him, he's like, "Hey, can you do teeth?"
Amazing. So we've talked where Kryptek has been for a while. Where do you see Kryptek going? What's next that you can tell us?
Well, we got a ton of stuff going on, and it's in multiple directions. We're at a life cycle now where, we're adding people, getting more professional. Kryptek was a hobby for a long, long time. And we're kind of transitioning out of hobby phase into reality phase. When it comes back to camouflage, which is kind of the core of this discussion with Ripstop by the Roll, for the way ahead is we've got programs we're well underway with, other military units. There's probably, I don't know how many camouflage patterns that we developed that are on the shelf that haven't been brought to the civilian market. And some of those are coming together faster than others. In the meantime, though, we're just going to continue to develop and innovate and, bring better product online for end users and customers. So, that's, I think, to summarize where we're at right now. And in the future, I like to believe and feel that Kryptek is going to be a brand that's going to be around for a long, long, long time. And who knows what it'll be in 20 years, 30 years, 50 years. But we're just going to continue to innovate. We've got products right now that have nothing to do with apparel and nothing to do with camouflage that we're, bringing into U.S. Spec Ops. And so I feel like we've got a bright future.
It seems like you all are set up for that too. I mean, the amount of growth that you've seen so quickly is remarkable. And we think that the work you guys do is really cool. I mean, that's why we're such big fans of having you all here and really excited to be partners with you all right now. So for people making their own gear at home, the majority of our listeners are people that make their own backpacks, hammocks, tents, shelters, things like that. What does Butch Whiting, CEO of Kryptek, want to tell those individual makers about Kryptek? People that might be on the fence about camos in the past or haven't been totally sold. What's something that they maybe wouldn't know?
We're just a bunch of former soldiers that absolutely love to hunt. We're family men, and if you make really good shit, send samples to 291 East Shore Drive, Eagle, Idaho, and I'll put it to the use and tell you all about it. If it's sick and epic, then we might have to have a conversation about commercializing it and bringing it to market. But in all actuality, we see you guys as an extension of the Kryptek team, and looking forward to what you guys come up with.
This has been a ton of fun, Butch. Thank you so much for taking some time to talk with Isaac and I, to share with Ripstop on the Record community. We really appreciate the time that you spent with us today.
Thank you guys. Appreciate you guys too.